what Benjamin Netanyahu said on his interview on 60 Minutes. He mentioned that the United States, the war is not over, which was repeated, by the way, yesterday by Donald Trump. He said we are not over with the war against Iran, and we have something like 70% of what we had in our mind before this war started. I don't know what does that mean, this 70%, where does it come from? But Benjamin Netanyahu said the same thing. We accomplished a lot. What is the mindset on the part of this 70%, and what do they want to achieve, and what have they achieved so far?
Were you going to play a clip, or just we jump into it?
No, we can jump in because 60 Minutes doesn't let us to use their clips. They're gonna
really
bring they're gonna bring our talk down, and right after, and we have to remove it.
Okay. Well, let's see. What did the United States and Israel accomplish? They killed off one layer of leadership in Iran, and brought together now a leadership group that all fought together, and not directly, but they all fought in the Iran-Iraq War of 1980 to 88. So now you've got a full government of combat veterans who've been to war. They know what war is. So this notion that there's a great division between the so-called moderates and the so-called extremists, that's just a load of Western propaganda. Not true. Instead, you've probably got, I would argue, greater unity within Iran's leadership now than you've had at any time in the past. I'm not sure all of the previous, the ones. It is true. I guess I was told that even the Ayatollah Khamenei, the father, even he fought in the Iran-Iraq War. Of course, he would have been, well into his 40s at that time. What else did they accomplish? Oh, they basically got all of the U.S. military bases in the Gulf region deactivated or destroyed, and they got that accomplished, so that the United States' its ability to sustain its presence in the Gulf is not what it was. They've depleted a large number of essential weapon systems, and to rebuild those, they need to go to China and beg China to give them the rare earth minerals in order to reproduce those. They've managed to unite the Iranian people around a government that previously there was opposition to, but now even those who were considered, like the Lego guys, those kids creating the Lego videos, they actually were previously somewhat critical of the government, but now, they're the most effective propaganda arm of the Iranian government. So something we've never, ever seen before. Yeah, so great accomplishments by the West. I forgot the most important one. They achieved the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, the crippling of the global economy, and the likelihood that the United States, as in Europe, will be faced with serious stagflation. Other than that, they still they haven't done much. So you get my sarcasm throughout this. This is an unmitigated disaster for the United States and Israel. Instead of weakening Iran, they've strengthened Iran, and through it, Iran has strengthened its relations with Russia and China. And in turn, Russia and China have seized this opening, seized the initiative to be moving forward with creating a new international security architecture in the Persian Gulf, one that displaces the United States and leaves the United States weaker, actually.
It seems that Iran's response to Trump's proposal was somehow unthinkable on the part of Donald Trump. Because he came out here, Larry said it totally unacceptable what Iran, had to say to this proposal. And basically what we've learned from the new proposal, or the response from the Iranians, they're repeating the same points. They're not changing anything with that 10-point plan.
this is so reminiscent of what has gone on with Russia in terms of trying to negotiate with Russia and Trump's. You know, the Vladimir Putin laid out Russia's positions very clearly on June 14th, 2024, and they haven't deviated from that at all, not at all. So here comes Iran and lays out, the four essential. There's a lot of, there are six other things, but the four critical ones are lift the sanctions, unfreeze the assets. We're going to control the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll talk later about nuclear enrichment and such. That's it. They haven't changed. And the United States keeps acting like this is something new and dramatic. So I think Iran understands that there is no real viable negotiation with the United States until such time that the economic chaos that is unfolding around the world hits the United States and creates enormous political pressure on Trump. I mean, right now he's only at about 33% support, maybe lower. So God, I saw him yesterday. He put out a Truth Social message about how he's happy with the polls. They're lying to him, absolutely lying to him. So he's got he's going to have to have a wake-up call at some point, and it'll only be then that I don't give much chance that negotiations will succeed. This war is not necessarily going to end through negotiations. It's going to end with the reality that the United States has to accept we no longer have the military power that we once thought we did. Oh boy, and that's going to be a shocking revelation, because the average American really believes, man, all we got to do is go in there and drive our battleships into the straits and blow up those Iranians and kick ass. It's just all we got to do is just have enough guts to do it. It's like, guys, you don't understand. Try that and see what happens.
But Larry, the tone in the United States, based on the latest polls, is changing, because 64% of Americans believe that the United States is not winning against Iran in the Middle East.
Correct.
And only 13% believe that the United States is winning.
Yep.
That's totally, against what Donald Trump is trying to picture for us.
Yeah.
With the beautiful AI generated photos that he's putting on his Truth Social account.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of AI generated photos, that AI generated photo of me, come on, dude. I had to look and said, who is that? Yeah, no, but there's that's actually probably a good parallel. The Trump foreign policy it's being operated on artificial intelligence. And if you will, I had an experience with AI. I asked it a particular question to review a particular video, and it came back and said, yes, this video made by so-and-so. And it wasn't. I mean, it was someone else. So I wrote back to the AI. I said, hey, you're wrong. It's this. So it comes back and goes, oh, yeah, my bad. I made a mistake. So once you encounter that, you realize the limits of AI. And, some things are good, but some things are bad. And, Trump's foreign policy is just, it's a mess. There's no coordinated, coherent strategy at all. So, like, he's going over to meet Xi Jinping, right? And so what does the Trump administration do? It announces new sanctions against a Chinese company that took satellite photos that showed the reality of what was going on in the Middle East. Yeah, that I'm sure Xi's going to be real happy with that. So Trump, you want to find ways that you can make the trip as conflict free as possible. Instead, Trump seems to be heaping up one one more point contentious issue after another on the agenda.
The guy is totally confusing the foreign policy and diplomacy with what he knows as the deal, some sort of real estate deals that he was dealing with during his lifetime, I would say. And because
Yeah.
whenever you put pressure on these countries, they're not gonna cave, they're gonna fight back. This is the main reason that Russia is in its position in the way it is right now. Iran is the way that they're fighting back with the case of the blockade. They're
Yeah.
not caving. That's the reason. I don't see China shows that today China is different from what it was, I would say, before 2022. And with the tariff war, we've seen how China hit back at the United States and how they were coming back and fighting the Trump administration.
Yeah.
I don't know how is it going to help Donald Trump, but it doesn't seem that he's learning anything when it comes to diplomacy and how to deal with how the foreign policy works, and he's continuing with the same sort of attitude.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was there's the assumption that China is much weaker or Iran is much weaker than is the case. I came upon a new statistic yesterday, or I'd asked about it, that because I was talking to someone who's making the case about how weak China was. I said, well, let's look at the debt to GDP ratio offhand. And I said, I'm not sure what it is for China, but I suspect it's far worse for the United States. And lo and behold, the numbers were this, that if you look at the central federal government only, sort of the national level government, China's debt to GDP ratio is 29%. What is that of the United States? 123%. And it's probably higher now. Now, if you take in the broader government at all levels, like let's say at the national level, and then at the federal or the state level, whatever, or canton level, and down to cities and such. So take the broader government, all levels. The debt for China is 85% or 88%, and the United States is 140%. So again, the economic strength lies with China. And then if you take total economy-wide debt, like the average citizen, their debt, total debt for China is 302%. For the United States, 720%, or 719. Double, more than double. So my point in all of this is the United States is acting like China is an economic basket case, and we're like the guy who's a meth heroin addict going to talk to somebody about their drug addiction, that they have a problem. When they're only they're addicted to smoking cigars. We've got a far more critical problem. And then the way the world economy has changed. Right now, I think we made this point on Friday, that in 2000, Japan had 5 of the top 10 banks in the world. With the number 1 bank in the world at the time was considered Deutsche Bank in Germany, followed by BNP Paribas. Jump ahead now to 2025. China's got the 4 largest banks, followed by 2 American banks. And then you get, I think, the British HSBC, Paribas, BNP Paribas, and Mitsubishi. I think that rounds out the top. Notice that, Japan, 4 of the 5 banks disappeared off that list. And China has taken over. Now, this gets in. There's something called the derivatives market. So we saw this in 2008 with the collapse of the housing market. So a derivative means, let's say that let's do it like a casino. So you go in and you place a bet that you're going to on roulette that it's going to hit 12 red. Okay, so the first derivative is I'm standing in the audience watching you. So you know what? I'm going to bet you that Nima's going to win. And someone else says, oh, I'll take that bet. I'll bet you he's going to lose. And then you got another group of people that are sitting there watching, me watch you. And they go, you know what? I'm going to bet that Larry is right. And someone else said, no, I'm going to bet Larry's wrong. So now they're betting that my prediction about what you're going to do, that my prediction is going to be right or wrong, and then their prediction. And then someone else says, hey, you know what? I'm going to bet that those guys who are betting against Larry, so you see how this builds up. That's the derivative market. What there's a derivative trader named Alex. He has a YouTube channel, Reportify, and he's been involved with the derivatives business for 20 years. And he says that market is $600 to $700 trillion. Basically speculative bets, people leveraged in such a way that if the bets go sideways, they could lose a lot of money. And what's interesting is he identified the top 10 banks that are involved with all this activity. None of them are Chinese. They're all Western banks. So I find that fascinating that the Chinese don't get directly involved with all of this speculative stuff, that they appear to stay much more grounded. So what this means coming into this week's talks with Trump and Xi is that Chinese are in a very, very strong position, and Trump has no trump cards to play.
And the other point that it doesn't seem that Donald Trump is getting it is these countries, the relationship or partnership, whatever we can call it, between Russia and China, between China and Iran, Iran and Russia, they don't interfere in the internal affairs or in what is important for their security. They don't dictate, they don't force each other, they cooperate with each other. This is the whole point, in my opinion, with the case of the partnership or relationship between these countries. And the Trump administration doesn't seem to get it. That's why they may ask, I would say, I don't know, what is your understanding of this visit of China and what he's going to ask?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Whatever he asks, he's got very little leverage. Maybe he wants to see if he can get China to pressure Iran to back off and to stop, and China's not going to do that. I think the U.S. delegation is operating on the assumption that because China is on paper a major importer of oil, that it's under more pressure than the United States with respect to that shortage, and therefore will be looking for a way out. But I put up a piece at sonar21.com last night that lays out, and it's based upon a video done by Kevin Walmsley, who he lives in China. He's actually from the area where I live in Florida, it's Sarasota. And he walks through in detail that actually China is not vulnerable in the way that the West thinks. They're just the opposite. They have a much more stable, predictable path forward. And this is where the Western experts consistently overestimate China's fragility and underestimate China's resiliency. And we're going to see that this week, where Trump thinks he's got some pressure, can leverage China. Except let's look at what China's doing. Not only does it have the top 4 banks in the world, but it's starting to unload U.S. treasuries. It's not buying them, it's getting rid of them, and it's buying up gold and silver. It's setting up an alternative payment system to SWIFT called SIPS, Cross-Border Interbank Payment System. So, and and China's reaching out to establish relations, commercial relations with countries around the world, whereas the United States is doing all in its power to try to damage China. Again, if I'm the Chinese, I'm not sure I'd take the meeting with Trump. I'd tell him just go pound sand, because everything that the Trump administration has done has been involving sanctions against China or against different Chinese companies. It's not, we're not sending them a thank you note for anything. And we saw how that backfired early on in the, a year ago with the trade sanctions, the tariffs, that Chinese said, okay, we'll stop buying U.S. soybeans. The soybean market in the United States basically crashed. And because they said, well, we'll buy from Brazil. Brazil makes plenty of soybeans. Exactly what happened. So, Trump's actions hurt American farmers, didn't protect them, and made them more vulnerable. So I see, China knows how to play that game. They are much, much smarter at it than the United States is.